Welcome back to Observing the Sabbath. I am your host, Nathaniel Wolner, and I am joined once again by Johnny Gifford. Johnny, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Nathaniel. What's better than talking about Sabbath? Nothing.
Literally, there's absolutely nothing. And, you know, it's great to be doing this. We have, of course, gone through all of Sabotage, the sixth studio album from Black Sabbath from 1975. So we did all of our thoughts and reactions and commentaries and whatnot to all the songs, wrapped it all up in a nice, neat little bow. And now we are taking a look at all of your thoughts and all of your comments from all of those videos. So as we do for every album, we compile all the comments from the comment sections for each of the videos, and then we go through and we discuss them here. And this is probably one of my favorite videos we do, because I feel like I get to interact with the viewers the most here doing this than we do for anything else. And I just have a ton of fun doing these, and people have such great insights, and they'll shine a light on things that I don't necessarily know myself. They'll give a new perspective on things, a new interpretation. They may have a different piece of history that I don't know myself, and it's just a great learning experience, and it's also fun to just kind of go through and talk about what everyone wants to talk about.
Shall we?
We shall. So our first comment today comes from JD Pyrotechnics, one of the longest viewers of this channel, who writes, and this is off the Hole in the Sky video, by the way. Kicking off with Hole in the Sky, JD writes, "One of my favorite riffs ever. The ending is still off-putting to me, even after hearing it for years." So this is one of the things I never thought of, but when we started getting comments for Hole in the Sky, a lot of people were talking about the ending of the song being off-putting. I can understand why people are saying that, because it really does just kind of a very abruptly end. But at the same time, with the riff that is being played, that main riff that plays through Hole in the Sky, I don't know how you end it any other way. And to me at least, ending the song right there on the high note, and then you go right into Don't Start Too Late, I think that's the perfect ending to the song. But I can understand why people feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's another Sabbath song that ends quite like Hole in the Sky does, but that riff is just so bluesy and so good that, like, it just feels like it should just the ending of it goes into the beginning of it, and it should just keep going. So, I mean, at that point, it's like, all right, how do we end it? We just cut it off. Like, we can't leave it on any sort of
Yeah, exactly. And I think the song itself is so high energy, and like I feel like the only way to kind of end that song is just to end it with that sort of ferocious, like right in the middle of things. End it as strongly as in a pace as the song is. So I mean, could they have just faded it out? Sure, but I feel like it jolts you awake when it ends like that, and you're like, oh, whoa, we're getting into this album now. But that's at least my opinion. And
I bet if you put it on repeat, it would sound really good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. All right, Bryce Neal continues with, the bass in this song especially is very deep and gritty. It almost sounds like NIB bass tone. I could see that. I can definitely see that. That's a very good comparison there. And I agree. The bass in the song is a great undercurrent for the phenomenal riff that Tony comes up with. And this song is firing on all cylinders, and it's just so fast-paced and high energy, and it's a great song and a killer opening to the album.
Yeah, really a strong way to start off, which they're, once again, they're always really, really good at doing that.
Yep, absolutely. All right, and we're continuing Hole in the Sky with Misanthrope666, who writes, "The way the song ends is a little bit weird. That cut at the end is so abrupt to me, as if the song was uncompleted. However, Hole in the Sky is really cool. I like that video of the band playing it at the Don Kirshner rock concert." That is a great video. I don't know if you've seen this before, Johnny, but
I haven't, no.
It's one of their live shows. They did a Don Krishna rock concert. I'm sure if you just Google that, you'll be able to find it. But there's a few different songs, and it was around this era. So you have a little bit of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath / Sabotage kind of all mixed in into this era, I believe. Well, it must have been after 75. It was probably 75, 76 when this concert happened. But their performance of it is great in this. And, you can really hear Ozzy's hitting those high notes, and you could tell they're really in their prime at that video. So you and I had done a video doing the quote-unquote Live in Paris from 1970 show, and which was a ton of fun, and we talked about that we were going to do more. At some point we will, and I think the Don Krishna rock concert will be one of those that we have to do, because that is a great show.
Great. And I feel like I want to come into a lot of these fresh as well. I want it to feel like we're just like going to a Black Sabbath concert and just watching it and discussing it with each other, I want it to feel fresh.
I said too much. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said he hits the high notes. I apologize. I didn't mean to spoil your
experience. It's okay. I wasn't even listening that whole time, just to keep my mind fresh.
He misses all the notes. Ozzy's just terrible. They boo them off stage. Bill can't hit a single piece of the drumming. Nothing works. So there you go.
Hey, every band's got shows like that,
Not Black Sabbath. No, they have.
No.
All right. And we are continuing now with Bryce Neal, who writes, I also feel like the drums are higher in the mix and louder. In Sad Bloody Sabbath, they were smaller and our lower volume. How do you take this, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to really listen to them back and forth to really be able to, like, agree or disagree with this. But, I think a song like this definitely warrants really punchy and powerful drums. I don't know if maybe it's just a matter of them being more compressed. If you listen to, like, the bass drum and the snare and the way that they interact with the rhythm of, like, the guitar and the bass in Hole in the Sky, it really feels like they're following, like, the bass drum and the snare are following the same rhythm that the guitar riff is playing, and even kind of the bass riff too. So I'm sure that they want those two pieces of the kit to be like just way more compressed than usual, just because it should punch more, and that'll make it punch more. So like I said, I can't really say one way or the other, but it would make sense given how tight rhythmically the drums are with the rest of everything.
I agree, and I think also another part of it is that Sabbath Bloody Sabbath has a lot of, like, stark changes throughout the song. It goes into the acoustic part, it goes into the heavier parts, whereas Hole in the Sky is really just kind of one line all the way through. And so I think it would make a little bit more sense that the drums are a little bit more pronounced in Hole in the Sky, because it kind of has that, over-the-top, heavy nature all the way through. Like the song really feels like you're just getting smacked over the head with a hammer in a good way. Way. If I ever wanted to be smacked on the head with a hammer, it would be Hole in the Sky that I'd want to be smacked with. So.
And there's a lot of heaviness in this album, honestly. So that could just be a staple for the rest of this album, and something I never really paid attention to prior, but now I definitely will.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, moving on to our friend, Glenn Kirchens. We love Glenn here.
Love Glenn.
Glenn writes, a song about either being... I forgot about this comment. A song about either being thrown in jail or living in a butthole. Solid banger. And can we address the cover, please? So been waiting on this, as you know. Made my weekend. So I genuinely don't know. I don't know how one arrives at Hole in the Sky being about living in a butthole.
I mean, what's the difference between those two items? Being thrown in jail or living in a butthole?
There is not too much of a difference there. I will agree it is a solid banger. And the cover. This is a good time to talk about the cover.
It is.
Let's see. I've got the cover right here for the folks watching. Very interesting. So the story behind the cover. The band did not know that they were going to be shooting the cover when they went into the studio that day. So they just went into the studio wearing whatever they were wearing, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna let's pose and we'll take this picture for the album cover." So you get the assortment of outfits that everybody is wearing along with those are Bill's infamous tight red pants that he's wearing.
Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah, I mean, I've read some people who like shit on the cover and say that it's bad. I mean, as far as Sabbath covers go, I think Sad Bloody Sabbath is the more dynamic cover, and I love the simplicity of Volume 4, and I absolutely adore the Black Sabbath debut album cover. But I like this. I mean, it captures who these people are. It captures their flair. And I don't think it's bad in any way. I mean, it could have been a different design and it could have been better, but I think it also captures who these people are at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty cool cover. I especially like the mirroring effect that's done there. And especially, like, I can look at this sober and think this, but especially if I'm stoned and looking at this album cover, I'm like, wait a second. But it's like a mirror, but how'd they get but it's the other way, but... You know?
And that was the design. By design, they wanted to trip up anybody who was in fact tripping.
Exactly, and I respect that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's a cool cover. And, you know, personally for me, I think the weakest album cover is Master of Reality, because it's literally just the title, Master of Reality, on a black background. Yeah. Which, I mean, works for the album. Like, I mean, it's not bad, but I think it's by far the weakest because there's literally no cover. It's just the title. But that's at least me. And I do say what you will about Never Say Die, the album, which I actually really like. The cover for that is really cool. I love the fighter pilot sort of with the mask, and it looks very much like, I've always looked at that and thought it looks like the face hugger from Alien on somebody. Like, it just kind of has that look to it. So I love Never Say Die. That's a really great cover. All right, cool cover. Moving on. We have Orange70383, who writes, "Some bands don't even come up with one riff that's as good as this one ever. And here on this and their other albums, Tony just belts out one iconic riff after another. It's really unbelievable. And to me, Ozzy's voice has always been a perfect match for the band. His voice has a kind of haunting, trippy sound that is totally unique. Sabotage has a great album cover too," going back to their discussion with the last question. I completely agree. I mean, how many bands can you say just, like, I think maybe people can make an argument that there are people who are better singers than Ozzy. You can absolutely make that argument. You can make an argument that there are bass players who play bass better than Geezer, that there are guitar players who play guitar better than Tony, drummers who play drums better than Bill. But I don't think, how many people can you, or guitar players or bands can you say were able to create as much as they did, as many iconic things as they did? And for Tony, like, how many guitar players have created as many iconic, just instantly recognizable guitar riffs as Tony has, ones that have stood the test of time? And like, with pretty much every song, you have 2 or 3 riffs that are just absolutely phenomenal per song. Multiply that over the album, and yeah, exactly like Orange said, like, you get some bands that can't even come up with one, and Tony's just like pulling them out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it is like just overall chemistry too. Like, even if you're not the greatest guitar player, the greatest drum player, whatever in the world, just having that like musical relationship with other people and being able to communicate with each other with your instruments really effectively and really well, and have it feel like conversational almost, is like the biggest part of it. Because if you don't have that chemistry, even if you're like a really good guitar player, your music isn't going to sound great if, you know, you're all not on the same page musically. And Sabbath is, very clearly.
Yeah. And I think even just going back to their first album, you can tell, like, since they recorded that mainly as just their live show, they have such great chemistry, not just as people, but while they're playing, that they're so intuitive with each other. And I think when you have a band where all the members are completely on the same page and get it, it really shows in their work. And I think that's probably why when you got to the end of their 8 years together as Sabbath, their work was not as tight as it was in the beginning because they were less and less on the same page with each other. But yeah, and I completely agree. I think you and I have gone in length talking about Ozzy's voice in the past. I think it perfectly fits this band, and Ozzy's voice doesn't stand on the same page as like the greatest singers of all time, but for what he is able to match his tone and his voice with what the song requires in a way that not everybody can. And so I think in that sense, he absolutely fits what this band needed him to be.
Yeah, I mean, his voice fits the very wide dynamics of all of Sabbath's songs. Within each album, there are so many different kinds of songs, ranging with so many different kinds of dynamics. And yeah, I mean, I'd say Ozzy matches them pretty well every time. He's not just like doing his shrill scream for every song all the time. You know what I mean? Like that he can do more than just that. He can actually sing. But when he wants to do his shrill scream, and when he does do that, I feel like it's always warranted, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, it's always for what the song requires. Yeah. And that's just great. All right. Our friend NP writes, in short, Black Sabbath songs like this. Oh, sorry. In short, Black Sabbath songs like this, you can hear why these guys are geniuses. So much music in such little time. That's a great way to put it. So much music in such little time. And even, it's funny because I've referred to this as a short song as well. I think it's like 5 or 6 minutes. So it's not really.
It's 4 minutes.
Oh, it's 4?
Yeah, which is fairly short comparing it to a lot of their other songs.
So it's not Embryo, which is like 30 seconds, but it is on the shorter side for Sabbath, but it's not like considerably short. But I completely agree. That's a great way to put it. So much music in such little time. They really know how to jam-pack a song, and even when they have their shorter songs where it's like 1 or 2 riffs that they just go back and forth, and it's not like 6, 7, 8 different parts or elements or like completely changing up the tone or the speed or anything. They still find ways to really make it engaging. Like, I don't think anyone's listening to Hole in the Sky and getting sick of that riff. Like, oh, when's the song gonna be over? I've heard this awesome riff too many times. I don't think you've had anybody like that. They really find great ways to just make it so engaging and dynamic.
Yeah, and if anything, that repetition in this song just kind of makes it more groove-like. It makes you just want to keep grooving to it because it's really cemented as the riff of the song, the groove of the song. And I like that. I like just feeling like I could just groove to this for hours, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. All right, moving on to Steve, 1300, who writes, fun fact about the scream in the intro. Scream in the intro for Hole in the Sky, which begins with the hum of the amplifier set at maximum volume, a scream of attack. The scream was an in-joke delivered by Mike Butcher. Quote, Sabbath had a supporting act who had a manager who would stand behind them on stage shouting, attack, attack, says the producer. So that's what I shouted from the control room through the tannoy. Is it tannoy?
Probably tannoy.
Tannoy. The PA system. And which I remember when we go a little bit further in the questions, I think somebody else had a thought that they said something else. So, since we have a quote from the producer, I'm going to assume that it actually is attack. I love that, and I said this during the video for Hole in the Sky. I love that little opening. You know, it just kind of gives like a nice little like lead into the album. You just hear the hum of the amplifiers. You hear what I never really discerned what it was being said. I just thought the tone of it was interesting, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then right into the song. And I think it's a fantastic opening.
It's easy to miss if you're listening to it at a somewhat low volume as well.
Yeah,
because it's you're for the real ones.
Yeah, because you put on the record. And you're like trying to figure out the what volume do I have, and then suddenly the song starts, and you're like, oh shit, I gotta turn it up or turn it down, or depending upon wherever you're at. Never turn it down, kids. Always turn it up.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Shaspir's1 writes, cool t-shirt, brother. I believe I was wearing my Never Say Die Black Sabbath shirt.
Oh, there you go. That is a pretty cool t-shirt.
It is a pretty cool. So, fun story real quick about that. So, I used to have that shirt, not the exact same shirt. Well, it was the same design, but not the actual shirt. I used to have that shirt back in, like, middle school. And I didn't really know Black Sabbath. I had a ton of band shirts for bands that I didn't really know. Like, I remember I had an AC/DC shirt for one of their albums, and a teacher was like, "Oh yeah, you like that album? You like this song?" And I just stared at them with this blank face because I had no idea what they were talking about. And so that taught me, don't wear t-shirts for bands that you really don't know. But I had that shirt. And so, for whatever reason, a few months ago, I was going through some yearbooks, and I found 7th grade yearbook photo was me with that Black Sabbath shirt.
Wow.
And I was like, well, is this not foreshadowing what my future would be?
That's amazing. That is amazing.
So yeah, so the Georgetown Middle School didn't know what hit them.
Nope.
So anyways, yeah, thank you, Shakespeare's One. I love that t-shirt. That's such a cool shirt. Shakespeare's One continues with, I hate it when other famous bands do Black Sabbath covers, and they turn a Black Sabbath song into a punk song. This one is one of the worst for that. I'll admit, I have not heard many covers for Hole in the Sky. I'm sure they're out there. I think it really all depends upon who's doing it and what they're going for with covers. Because I'm not a huge covers fan. I think there are some covers that are just fantastic that improve upon the song. And there's a lot of songs that I adore that are in fact covers. Same with movies and remakes. There's this... It's killing me that I don't remember his name. But there's this one guy who did this really passionate cover of Changes. And he just had the most incredible voice. And someone in the comments section remind me who it was. But he did a phenomenal cover of Changes. And of course, Metallica did a cover. They combined a National Acrobat with, I believe it was Sabracadabra. And so they had, like, it was playing Sabracadabra, and then it kind of just went into the main riff of National Acrobat. And they did a great job with that. Have you heard many Sabbath covers or covers of Sabbath songs, Johnny?
No, I don't think I have at all, honestly. But given like the Sabbath cult community is how it is, I can imagine people aren't always very receptive to them because it's never going to be the same. It's never going to be like the original, obviously. And I think covers can be cool if you make it your own thing and you totally change it up to something that more complements you and the way you play music. I think that can be cool. But I haven't really heard how the Hole in the Sky one or any of the other Sabbath covers that are out there have really landed. I haven't really heard any.
Yeah, what I like more is there are a lot of Sabbath cover bands that go in really interesting directions. So there's Jazz Sabbath, which takes Black Sabbath songs but does them completely as jazz instrumentals.
I would like that.
Yeah, those are really cool. Sometimes when I'm listening, I have a hard time even hearing the actual Sabbath song, but it's beautiful pieces of music. So that's a cool one. Look this up on YouTube, Johnny, at some point. Mac Sabbath, I believe is the name of it, where it's they take the costumes of like the McDonald's like characters and wear them while they perform, and they do food related spins on Black Sabbath songs. I can't remember one of the examples off the top of my head, but Sweet Beef. That's one of them. And so there's this, if you can also find it on YouTube, there's this great, so Ozzy and his son, Jack, had this show on Travel Channel called Jack and Ozzy's World Detour, where they like go around to different parts of the world and like visit different things and do different things. And so one of the things that they did was they went and saw this band perform. And so you just get to see Ozzy's reaction to Mac Sabbath as they're singing Sweet Beef. Uh, and he's like, you can tell he has no idea what the hell is going on.
Oh my god, that sounds like a treasure. Absolute
Yes.
treasure.
Everybody, look that up on YouTube. And another quick one is Santa Sabbath, I believe is the name of it, where they do Christmas-related versions of their songs. Giving Yourself a Gift is one of my favorites. They have some great ones, I will say.
That one took a minute for me to connect, but
Yeah.
they really put a positive spin on that one.
Yes. Oh yeah, they did. Oh, and the lyrics for that song are great. That's one of my favorites. All right. Moving on, we have Glenn Kirchin's writes, "What are you, chicken?" Which, when I first read it, I had no clue what Glenn was talking about. Between this and the Butthole comic, I was wondering what Glenn was on when he was watching this video. But I believe that's what he was writing this thinking that that's what they were saying in the beginning of the song instead of attack. Which,
attack, I see.
when you listen to it, I can hear, "What are you, chicken?" But I think since we have the quote from the producer saying it's attack, I think that's probably what it is. But I can hear it, Glenn. I can hear it. So thanks for the comment there.
It's always good to have his input on stuff like that.
Absolutely. Glenn always has the best insight.
Mm-hmm.
And then our final comment off of Hole in the Sky comes from Chef Rick Orlando, who writes, "Definitely one of the most underrated metal albums ever. Megalomania is one of metal's best." We will be going into Megalomania in a little bit here. I agree. I think this is a very... Well, I used to say it was an underappreciated Sabbath album, but since we started doing this channel, I've had so many people just say that this is their favorite Sabbath album. So, I mean, maybe within Sabbath circles it's not underappreciated, but in the larger music world or world in general, I guess, it is a rather underappreciated album. But I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, like, what Sabbath albums are generally the most popular, I'd say it's an underrated one. But among, like, cult fans, like, probably most of the people that are watching this channel, they know how good that Sabotage really is. And honestly, Megalomania is probably my favorite song off this album. I can't wait to get into that one.
Absolutely, and that is coming up fairly soon. And next we kind of lumped in Don't Start Too Late with Symptom of the Universe, so we kick that off with Misanthrope 666, who writes, "This song, well, this album in general, shows the best of each Black Sabbath member, and that is the main reason why I love it." I think that is a great way of looking at it, and I completely agree, because I've said before, I think Ozzy is at his absolute best ever in his career with this album. I think Tony, you could definitely maybe I would lean a little bit more towards Volume 4 for Tony, for me, but Sabotage, no, you can't say that Tony is not absolutely on fire with his riffs and his playing in this record. And Geezer, of course, between the lyrics and the bass is fantastic, and Bill, of course, is phenomenal on drums. So I think that's a great way of looking at it. Everyone does showcase the best of their abilities with this album.
Yeah, and this song in particular, too. There's a lot of, like, you know, it takes brief moments for each member to just do, like, some crazy, furious, like, you know, licking or solos, and overall is just a powerhouse of a song.
Yeah. Symptom of the Universe is just mind-blowingly phenomenal. Alright, and Bryce Neal writes, "The change on the guitar tone at the 10-minute mark," that's probably the 10-minute mark for the video that we did.
Mm-hmm.
"The guitar sounds like it is coming through an old intercom speaker." So I'd never thought of that before, but I can kind of see what you're saying, Bryce. I believe that the guitar he's talking about, I believe, is like when it changes into that like acoustic part from, like, you know how it's kind of like moving up in tone, it's like building, and then it goes into the nice acoustic part, and then you get Ozzy's voice.
You think it's when the acoustic part hits? I
think so. Which, I mean, maybe I'd have to go back and check the video to see if that's actually the 10-minute mark. But I can see it, and I like those little attentions to detail.
Yeah, absolutely. And I even kind of get that feeling from like the the electric guitar notes that are bending up into the acoustic part. Like that kind of feels like a little bit squashed, the frequencies, which would give it that like intercom feel by it not having a lot of high fidelity on the low or the high ends.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Bryce Neal continues with the snare drum on the song especially is different than any album before it. It's not a very traditional sound, it is more of a tom sound. How do you take this?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think this song in particular has so much tom action going on that they really wanted to lean into that with the snare. And the snare, like, it's got a lot more, like, release. It's got a much larger release than a lot of their traditional snare sounds have, which, you know, could mean that it was recorded, the whole kit was recorded in a room that, you know, had really like hard and not sound dampening walls or something. So it's giving that room feel of the reverb of it. It could also be like, it's just a lot hollower of a snare to sort of mimic that tom sound. But yeah, I think because there's so many fills in this song, the fact that the snare sounds like one of the toms really is a good benefit, I think. And it really just makes all those fills just sound so full instead of it just being like a really tight snare hit. Yeah, I think it's all really open and reverberant.
Yeah, and it definitely helps give that like sort of ambiance to the song. It really fills it out. All right, Bryce Neal continues with the acoustic. I love how the acoustic guitar at the end goes from a melodic classical playing, then goes to a blues scale at 11/42. The change up in, and I said this in our video, the change up in Symptom of the Universe is what makes it my like second favorite Sabbath song of all time. Because had you had just the whole beginning part where it's the da 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 da, if it was just that sort of like really heavy metal part, it would have been like a classic Sabbath song. But what makes it just absolutely pushes it over the edge is that change up and turning into that second half of the song, and then the notes that Ozzy's voice hits and just how beautiful the guitar is, and it's that change just makes it revolutionary.
And it's so, I think I said this in the actual video we did, but it's so easy to just not even realize that it's the same chords that they're playing too, and it's the same like rhythm that they're playing as the beginning. It's just opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of like rock music or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's really cool because they do it so well. It's so effortless.
Oh, that song is the epitome of chef's kiss. Just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we continue with Symptom of the Universe with Frosty Bevs, who writes, "Love watching you guys nerd out on each track. The Thrill of It All is my favorite song on this album." I Thrill of It All, I've said many times, I think Thrill of It All is the most underappreciated Sabbath song probably ever. And we'll be talking about Thrill of It All shortly in this video. Symptom of the Universe has to be my favorite on this album. But yeah, I'm glad you enjoy watching us nerd out with each track. I mean, I have so much fun nerding out with each track. So we're glad to have you here, Frosty. And yeah, I love talking about this album because there's so many great songs on this album, and it's just, as an album, it's so great.
Yeah, I'm glad Frosty can enjoy us doing that and join us on our nerding out mentally, spiritually.
Absolutely. All right, Glenn is back, and Glenn writes, "Symptom of the Universe, one of my favorite Sabbath songs from the beginning. After I heard Sold Our Soul, so that is We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll was one of the first compilation albums that had come out for Black Sabbath. I forget what year that was. It was like, so after I heard Sold Our Soul at a buddy's house, his brother's collection, for the first time, I had to have more. My first Sabbath record I bought was Sabotage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. First Hole in the Sky, then Symptom of the Universe. Fresh, delicious Sabbath. Yes. The tightness of the rhythm section is what grabs me on the song. This band was angry. I was 14 and angry. So I love Fresh, Delicious Sabbath. I think that is perfect. And yeah, I agree. I think the band was angry, and as we've talked about in our videos, they were angry because they were getting ripped off by their managers, and they were in and out of courtrooms trying to gain control of their band and the music and the art they were producing, which subsequently led to them entirely producing their next record. So they were absolutely angry, and I think part of what makes this album so special is that all of the frustrations of what was going on in real life bled into this album and really infused it with that deep level of anger.
Yeah, you can hear that in the tracks for sure, and just how heavy a lot of them are, especially this one and the next one.
Definitely. Definitely. So great thoughts there, Glenn. And Glenn continues with best ever, busy day, and finally settle down and watch my favorite YouTube folks doing my favorite thing, listening to and loving Black Sabbath with others. Well, I'm glad you could sit down and enjoy this this channel and these videos. We're always glad to have you with us, Glenn.
Absolutely. Thank you, Glenn.
And then Glenn's next comment, maybe it's the edibles talking.
It probably is.
Probably. If you have to ask if the edibles are doing the talking, then the edibles are probably doing the talking. But that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's the edibles talking, but Symptom of the Universe is Sabbath's Helter Skelter. And that is a great comparison. I want to come back to that in a second. On a side note, I bet Symptom of the Universe would be more well known if it had been on Soldier Soul instead of Am I Going Insane? I agree as well. Maybe that's a discussion we have as fans sometimes. What songs, if included or in place of the track list on Soldier Souls for Rock and Roll, would have changed that experience? I know if other Sabbath tunes as well as Technical Ecstasy, Never Say Die were on it, I wouldn't have complained. So the thing about Soldier Souls is, so as I had just been saying before, that was definitely an entry point, and as Glenn said himself, that was definitely an entry point for so many people for Sabbath. It wasn't for me, and so I've not really listened to Soldier Souls for Rock and Roll, so I don't really have as much of an experience with that myself. So I don't know if it would necessarily be as productive for me to be talking about what songs should have been included or not included, but I agree, looking at the surface, if you're going to say, hey, on this compilation album, should we put Symptom of the Universe or should we put Am I Going Insane? I'm going to say, are you going insane? Because you should absolutely put Symptom of the Universe. But, and then on the note of it being Sal's Helter Skelter, when you realize and you take into consideration what Helter Skelter meant for the Beatles and in terms of completely changing the way people saw how they produced music, and I'm pretty sure that was before Abbey Road. So changing the way that people interpreted and saw how the Beatles could produce music, but also changing the landscape for music at the time, because nobody was making a song like Helter Skelter at the time, especially the biggest band of all time at that time. I agree. Now, obviously, Symptom of the Universe didn't have as much of a wide impact, cultural impact at that time that the song came out as Helter Skelter did, or the Beatles. But I think in terms of changing the way that we see a band, the context in which we could see a band and what they can be, and what kind of music they can make, I completely agree.
Yeah, and I feel like, talking about what's on the compilation, people hear that and, hear this compilation as their first experience with Sabbath, and they hear things that they like, then I feel like those first tracks that you hear are always the ones that are going to stick out to you the most, and they're always going to be the ones that you look back on as being, your favorite or your most nostalgic or whatever, just because they were the first ones that you've heard. So definitely you got to make careful decisions when putting out a comp like that for new listeners. And yeah, I think if Symptom of the Universe was on there, it would have stuck with a lot more people for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, moving on. We got Explosive Brick Studios writes, this is real quality content. I'm surprised you guys don't have millions of subs. Well, I understand why we don't have millions of subs, largely in part because of the next comment, which I think I did not put these here on purpose. But and they came in this way. So I think it's a perfect dichotomy of the responses we have to this channel. So I'm not surprised that we don't have millions of subs, but I'm really glad that you think this is good quality content, and I'm glad that you're with us, Explosive Brick Studios.
Yeah, thank you, Explosive Brick Studios. And honestly, the next one, these are my favorite kinds of comments ever.
And I'm all right. So well, thank you, Explosive. I'll kind of tie this in because I think these both are kind of conjoined in a way. So the next comment is Red McKinnon, who writes, "Why, oh why do you talk so much? You totally ruin this as you cannot hear the music, and it just your voice. It just your voice. It just your voice. Shut the bleep up." I did not censor it. He censored himself, or they censored themselves. And let us hear the bloody music. Well, Red McKinnon, I thought this would be a great opportunity with this comment to kind of talk about this, because this comes up inevitably with these videos. And I said it more in the beginning of the channel. I prefaced every video with it. And then I kind of stopped because I figured I was saying it every video, so people got the point. The way I see it is, well, we do talk through the songs, but the way I see it is that we're not doing a first-time reaction video. You know, there's so many of videos on YouTube of people reacting to songs for the first time. And when people talk during a song, when they're listening to it for the first time, when you're supposed to be getting their immediate experience and seeing what their expression is as the song hits them for the first time, that annoys me. But that's not what this channel is. And I personally feel like it would be disingenuous if we just sat there listening to this song that, at least for me, I've heard probably hundreds of times, because my expression and reaction to the song is not going to be that of somebody hearing it for the first time. You know, I hear these songs all the time, literally daily basis. So it's not that extraordinary for me to hear that song. And so you're not going to get any sort of reaction out of me that you would expect or that you would want in a reaction video. That's why when I was coming out with this channel, I decided to steer away from that and make it more of a commentary. I want to talk about the songs as we're listening to them. And I'll admit, and people have pointed it out, and I think it's fair criticism, there's some times where the conversation during the commentary part strays away from talking about the song as we're listening to it, and we get sidetracked about something that could be discussed after the song's over. And I think that's fair criticism, and going forward, I have tried and will continue to try to steer towards, when we're talking during the song, we're talking about the song itself and the parts of it as we're listening to it, not stuff that could be discussed after the song is over. But I always find it funny when I get, and luckily we don't get a ton of these, but I always find it funny whenever we get comments from people who are like, we can't hear the music, or you're talking over the music. And I'm like, I literally comment, I'm like, well, then look it up on YouTube. Look up the song on Spotify. Like, if all you want to do is hear the song,
this is not
listen to the song
thing for that. Yeah.
Why are you
go listen to the song and then come back?
Exactly. Like, why are you clicking on a video that says commentary and then complaining when people are talking during? It's literally as if you played the commentary for a movie, and you're like, why is the director talking over this movie? I want to watch the movie. Stop talking. Well, then watch the movie. Don't watch the commentary.
Exactly.
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. And, if you want to just watch somebody listen to the song, there are so many of those on YouTube. But I just don't feel like I could make that, because my reaction would not be genuine. If I were trying to make it a visually interesting reaction, I would be forcing it, and I don't want to force it. So that's why I designed the channel to be this way, because I felt like that worked better for what Johnny and I were bringing to the table. Oh, what do you think of this, Johnny?
Yeah, no, I agree. It just seems pretty clear that if you want to listen to the song, you should listen to the song on its own. And if you want to hear people talk about the song, then you listen and watch this. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's commentary, my dude. That's all.
And there have been people who have written the same sort of idea, but been really nice about it. And so main reason why I'm sort of lambasting Red McKinnon here is because it's so aggressive. It's shut the fuck up. And, like, there have been people who've written very nice, like, hey, just so you know, this, and this, and that. I think this, I think that, just so you know. I really think you guys are nice, and I like what you guys have to say, but I just think this. And I completely respect that. And I think, thank you so much. I appreciate honest and constructive criticism. But when you're just writing in the comment section, fuck you, blah 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 blah, you suck at this, that, it's like, how is that productive for anything? So
I just think it's funny.
It is funny. And so I love that these two comments were back to back, because I think it's the perfect dichotomy of what this channel is. You have people who are saying, I'm surprised you guys don't have millions of subs, with, you guys just talk over every blah blah. I'm like, all right. Well, this is why we don't have millions of subs, because a lot of people think this. And I knew when we were making this channel, I knew that it was going to be a niche thing. I mean, it's a channel exclusively about one band. Of course it's going to be niche. If I wanted to have millions of subs, we'd make a regular music channel and do all sorts of music. But I wanted to talk about Black Sabbath, so I chose to be niche. I chose to narrow the audience, because that's what I specifically wanted to talk about. And so that's the decision we made. Yeah, so Mike R. writes, I live for the end of this song. And what a perfect way to conclude our thoughts on Symptom of the Universe.
Yeah, just and perfect.
Just run right into Megalomania, keeping it going. Missantrock 666 writes, this song feels like the tale of someone losing his mind really slowly, and that is weird in a cool way. And I think it's sort of a thread that kind of goes through this whole album, because of course you have Am I Going Insane? You have a lot of imagery of that in the writ. And I agree. I think that's something I love about Megalomania. It's also so long that you have the different parts to it. It's sort of this like winding odyssey of somebody slowly losing their mind. So I think that's a great way to look at it, and I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I agree. That's
all right. Bryce Neal writes, the backing vocals sound like the same vocals on Super Czar. They might have used them on multiple songs. I could see where you're coming with that. I always thought it was just Ozzy doing a couple different tracks to give it that sort of like echo, and you have sort of like the deeper, like, I just assumed Ozzy was double tracking it, and then they sort of augmented Ozzy's voice a little bit. But it could very well be the same, like the choir that they had come in to do Super Czar. It could be that, although I would think that it would sound like it was more voices than just one voice. But I don't know for sure. Maybe it is, maybe it's not.
Yeah, this sounds like it could be 3 or 4, and they're probably all Ozzy, if not gang vocals from the whole band or something, which kind of gives it that same feeling as Super Czar, But yeah, so I definitely get where Bryce is coming from here.
Yeah, definitely. Bryce continues with, Black Sabbath has a rather small list of cowbell songs. This includes Lord of this World, Tomorrow's Dream, Megalomania, and Rock and Roll Doctor. And I think for the most part, when they use it really well, especially when we're talking about Megalomania. It's perfect. And, like, I don't know, like, I don't think you can just put a cowbell into any song and it works well, but if you use it for the right moment, for the right sound, and especially when they use it for the transition in the song.
Exactly.
Like, I think that's why it works so well, is because it's part of that transition. So, I agree, they do use it sparingly, but for the most part, when they use it, it's a good application of the cowbell.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to overdo cowbell, and it's a good thing Black Sabbath has only tastefully used it on like a handful of tracks, because any more than that, and it just feels forced or just like too much. But yeah, with this one, it's just like really it helps to ring in the new tempo, new rhythm, new beat, new this, new that. It's like, all right, guys, you ready? Let's go. It's like it's the lead in to like transitions between different parts, and I think it works really well.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Speaking of which, Glenn writes, more cowbell.
Classic.
Maybe not more cowbell, as we were saying. Using it sparingly is better, but I love what you're saying, Glenn.
Yeah, I like the energy of it.
Absolutely. Glenn also continues, imagine, if you would, a collaboration between our beloved boys from Birmingham and a full orchestra a la Metallica's S&M, starting with this epic tune. Also, that's the fastest 9-minute song of all time. So the Metallica S&M, I didn't know exactly what Glenn was talking about because I'm not like a huge Metallica fan. But I went and there's this album called S&M where the whole album, they literally have a full orchestra accompanying them as they perform a bunch of their songs, which is in of itself a cool idea. And I was listening to some of the tracks and it makes for a really cool sound. And it's just something different. And that's what I like is like bands like this, they're just doing something different and trying something unique. It would have been fascinating to see what Black Sabbath with a full orchestra like that would have been like. And I think Megalomania would probably be the most optimal song to do that for.
Oh, yeah, this song would be so great to have an orchestra backing with. Yeah. Yeah, I would love to hear that.
And bring in the choir from Superzar to do it as well. And you get all of them together. Oh, man, that would oh, now I'm getting a little jittery because I'm really wish that was a thing. And I agree, fastest 9-minute song of all time, 100%. Glenn, of course, showing us what it's like to be a model subscriber. I saw, I clicked, I watched, and as long as you liked and you commented as well, that's what I like to hear. And make sure you get the edibles to turn just right for when you click and you watch, and you're doing it the Glenn Kirchin's way.
Yeah, I think he's setting a model for everyone else out there who watches our videos.
Absolutely. All right, Bryce Neal continues. We're still on Megalomania. Bryce continues with, even though Tony has the same riff going through the song, it never gets repetitive. It's like the more he plays it, the more you notice about it. Every time he plays it, he adds different effects, like at the end he adds a flanger that makes it more powerful for a closer to the song. 100%. And yeah, like the more it goes on, the more you notice about it. And they do that a lot where they just they found a way to come up with riffs where it can play over and over and over again all the way through a song, and it never gets boring. It never gets tired. Like we were talking about this with Hole in the Sky. You get this, and Symptom of the Universe has it too, and this song as well. You never get sick of it because they just find a way to make it in a way where it's interesting and dynamic, and as often as you hear it, you never get sick of it. And that's probably why Black Sabbath is as long lasting as it is, because you can listen to their songs over and 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 over again, and you never get tired of it.
Yeah, they set really good grooves that are really and I mean, I feel like I'm drawn toward music like that in general too. But grooves of Black Sabbath are good, and more often than not, they're heavy too, which is a really cool combination that a lot of heavy bands don't try to groove. These guys, they groove.
They groove. Oh, they be grooving.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and Street Legal 1 writes, yeah, they played it live in 75, and it was excellent. Sabbath was on fire that year. So I think I had said in the video that I wasn't positive if they had played it live, but I thought it would be phenomenal to hear live. So that's great to hear that they played it live. And yeah, this was like 74, 75 was the absolute pinnacle of Black Sabbath. They were their absolute best during this sort of middle part of, well, I don't know if it's really middle, because it's sort of like the beginning of their third act, in a way. They were breaking into three, to put in screenwriting terms. They were absolutely on fire. And like I said before, I think Sabotage is Ozzy's best and just all their best in general. And I hope maybe there's a clip of it somewhere on YouTube of them playing the song live, because I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm sure all their legal troubles just made them more intense when they were performing too, just because of that anger that they were having and that frustration pouring into their music, both in the recording process and playing live, I can imagine.
Yeah. All right, so Hans von der Meulen writes, I like the moody first section. After that, there's the repetitive, moving up a bit, moving back down riff with a rock and roll type bit, which could serve as a chorus, with the only other big being the solo section. I truly don't know why folks are maybe raving about this song.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, whenever I do the videos, I always say at the end, what do you think? Do you agree with us or do you disagree? Do you maybe not like the song as much? Because, as we'll talk about once we get a little further in, there are songs on this album that I don't particularly like. But, as we'll see in the comments, there are people who do like it. And so as much as you and I and a lot of the other people commenting really love Megalomania, you have someone like Hans who doesn't necessarily see it the same way we do. And that doesn't mean that Hans is any less of a Black Sabbath fan, as I'm not any less of a Black Sabbath fan for not being a huge fan of Am I Going Insane? But, so if that's the way that it hits you, then that's the way that it hits you. I just personally disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I like this song because I love the intro and how it feels like proto-Doom, and just how it goes into the rest of the song, which the rest of the song is just, classic Sabbath.
And honestly, everything that Hans says that is a detraction for them, I personally think it makes it great. Like, I love the moody section and then the moving up, moving down, rock and roll type. Like, that's what makes me like the song. But, it just hits us different ways. And then we conclude Megalomania with O Cock, who writes, tambourine and cowbell are such elemental things close to nature and will always be up-catchy things, smiley face. Funny, I've been thinking of the exact same thing. Yeah, and I think those elements, I love when Black Sabbath bring those elements in, especially you get the tambourine with NIB, and then we were just talking about the cowbell, and I love when they can bring in these sort of other instruments, and then like Master of Reality on Solitude, you have the flute, and you have the synthesizer in Sad Bloody Sabbath that I could never pronounce correctly, for Who Are You? Minimoog, Minimeeg, any of which. I love when they can bring in these different sounds to really sort of flush things out a little bit more and just make things sound unique and different, and that's what I love about Sabbath.
Yeah, and I like what they're saying here about the elemental things, bringing it close to nature, because although I don't immediately think that when I think cowbell.
Hey, it's a cow, so...
I mean, objectively speaking, yes, but from a sonic perspective, I don't hear that and think of nature. But I think Sabbath does do that in general a lot, which I appreciate.
Yeah. All right, and we are continuing on with the thrill of it all. First up, we have Bryce Neal, who writes, his voice has more of a Robert Plant quality than other albums. In the second half of the song, you also have this synth line, but in this song, instead of other synth songs like Who Are You, have it more up front. This is one where it's more hidden, and it adds an extra bite to the guitar behind it. Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously, Who Are You, the main riff line of that song is the synth. But here, it's more sort of accenting the guitar, and I think it's a great way to put it, and I think that's part of what makes the song so great. I mean, had the synth been the main part of the song, I don't know if it quite would have worked as much as it does, but as an accent, I think it works beautifully.
Yeah, it's giving that guitar some of those lower overtones that it wants to sound like really gritty and really like fuzzy and piercing. It's like just playing it. The fact that it's playing in harmony with the guitar, yeah, just it adds to those overtones for sure. Makes it sound good.
Absolutely. All right. Next up, we got J2 Nick writes, finally, someone else praising the thrill of it all highly, and I totally agree. Even in hardcore Sabbath circles, I rarely see anyone talk about the song as highly. I've been saying that ever since I put out my first video on this channel. One of the highlights for me, which is something you haven't mentioned, is Geezer's bass line in the intro, which starts at around 6 seconds in. Absolutely incredible fun and a unique bass line. I haven't heard a bass line like that in any other rock song. Then it follows with such a freakingly, insanely good guitar solo from Tony, and it makes Geezer sort of play around with his bass again. It's like you're getting two incredible riffs in one song. Yep, you said it perfectly. And yes, we did not talk about Geezer's bass line, but it's like everything you just said is completely true, J2 Nick. And yeah, Yeah, and it always astounds me that I hear nobody talk about Thrill of It All. Nobody talks about this song, and it's like an absolute gem of a song, and I don't know why. I genuinely do not know why people don't talk about this song more, because I think it is just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and like the first half of the song feels like each part, and Sabbath very traditionally does like, very tight, very driven things. The first half of the song just kind of feels like each player is kind of, doing their own thing, saying their own thing. I mean, not to say that it still doesn't sound together, because it still does sound very together, but it's more of like, like J2 Nick here says with the bass line. It's its own melody right there. It's not just like keeping harmony to back up the guitar or anything else.
Yeah.
Each piece is doing its own thing, and then at the end it all kind of comes together, I think.
Yeah, beautifully put. All right, NP continues with brilliant, just brilliant song. The part after the middle is genius. I love it. I completely agree.
Yeah.
The song is brilliant. It really is. It's just so good. I'd say it's my second favorite song on the album, because you got Something to the Universe, and I think right under it you got Thrill of It All. But that's just me. I do love this song more than most, evidently.
Yeah, and it definitely, like I just said, just comes together after the middle, like really well.
Perfect. All right, Bryce Neal writes, when Ozzy comes in, notice how much reverb the drums have, and right after some of the snare hits, has a clap come right after it. So I'll have to go back and listen to it to specifically listen to that. But I think Sabbath just always does these tiny little things to help just create the overall sound and really have it all come together. As everyone knows, I always put things in terms of movies because I come from a movie background. It's kind of like a movie where you have all these little things kind of coming together to create the overall experience. And sometimes you're able to sort of discern every single little element, discern all the different sound effects, discern the tone of the music, discern all the use of color, the costume design, or all the other elements that kind of go into creating the mise en scène, if you will. But I think with Black Sabbath songs as well, they put so many little things into it to kind of create that overall experience that sometimes a lot of those little things go overlooked because you're just so swept up in the intended experience of the song, which is just hearing it as a whole.
Going back to the original comment too, I think it's very it's true to the production of the drums on this album. Like we were talking about earlier, they're natural. There's more of like a natural reverb on these drums. They feel bigger. They feel boomier than other traditional Sabbath drums, and particularly the snare too. And I think that like clap right after it, I think it's still snare from what I understand. I'd have to like really listen closely to say one way or the other, but it's just like a little ghost note, which is cool. It's like, hit your snare on the beat you should, but then you give it like a little tap right afterwards too, which is just, it's a neat little thing.
Yeah. Leave it up to Sabbath to do something neat.
Yeah.
All right. Glenn Kirchens writes, OTS, Observing the Sabbath. Bong rips. Thrill of It All. Criminally underappreciated song. Of course, that's another model way to watch this channel. Criminally underappreciated song. It's a middle song. It is a bridge between side A and start of side B. And I think that's another reason why I love the song, because it works so well as that bridge. And especially like when you listen to that context, because you have Megalomania comes to such a grand finish for side A, and then side B you put that on, and Thrill of It All is such a strong opener for the second side. It really works so well as that bridge.
Yep, and once again Sabbath, establishing that strong intro, that bridge there in the middle to connect their two sides, and then their outros. I think they know what they're doing when they're constructing their albums. It's very consciously decided.
Yep. Very deliberate.
Yeah.
All right. And then I apologize up front if I butcher this person's name. Soteros Lolis writes, I could drive from Portugal to East Siberia and right after from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego, just listening to the closing solo all the way. That's a great way to put how great this song is and how you could just listen to it. I think it last, yeah, it was on the last album. Glenn said that he, in 1982, he took acid and listened to Who Are You on repeat for like 4 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think those are, equally speaking, those are both great ways to illustrate how much how re-listenable, if that's even a word, I doubt it is, all these songs are. So thanks for the comment there.
Yeah, and that closing riff, really good. And of course the synth adds to it a lot, I think.
100%. RC Dolphin 714 writes, agree, always loved this song. I'm glad you did, because apparently not everybody loves this song for whatever reason, because nobody talks about it. So I'm glad we get a lot of people writing in here, either to agree with that sentiment or to express how much they just love the song in general.
Yeah, this is a safe space for lovers of the thrill of it all.
Absolutely.
And,
maybe I should just change the channel to that, safe space for lovers of thrill of it all. It'd be a little bit of a mouthful to say every video.
A little bit. We can, make it an acronym or something, but I'm glad we can cultivate that kind of environment.
Absolutely. All right, now we go into our comments from our Super Czar video. Glenn Kirchens writes, I believe that an entire live recording of Sabbath with an orchestra a la Metallica's S&M would have been un-effing believable. Yeah, we talked about this before. 100%, it would have been incredible, and I wish we got it. We didn't. Oh well, but we can always dream. All right, Misantrock 666 writes, this song is a perfect fit as a soundtrack for some fantasy movie like Lord of the Rings or something similar. That is a great point. I completely agree. It has that sort of fantastical nature to it, and I think there's a lot of fantasy in the lyrics for this album. Like, you get a lot of fantasy in Something in the Universe. You get a little bit of it sort of in Megalomania, and Thrill of It All has some fantasy in it. So I think to have a fantasy sound to the song, I think it works. And I agree, it would have been, and especially when you have the choir in there, sort of really upping the ante in that sense. I agree. It has that sort of tonal fit to it.
Yeah, it's the whole orchestral element of it just lends itself to being a soundtrack for sure. Mm-hmm. Feels like it could be in any fantasy game or movie or something.
So I asked the question, Peter Jackson, why didn't you use Super Czar by Black Sabbath in The Lord of the Rings? Those are perfect movies. Would have been even more perfect had you found a place for Super Czar. All right, Glenn Kirchens writes, if I was a pro wrestler, this would be my entrance music. Ozzy wasn't initially aware of the choir. He walked in, saw the choir and harp, and immediately walked out thinking he'd gone into the wrong studio. That is a true story. And I love that story because, he had, now I'd also heard it, so I've heard it two ways. I've heard it for this song, and I've also heard it for, Spiral Architect, that he walked into the studio, saw them, and thought he was in the wrong studio. So I'm not sure which it is. It could be, you could be 100% right, Glenn. It could be this one. It could be Spiral Architect. I've heard it both ways. But regardless, for one of those songs, that is the true story of what happened. And I love that because it's so fitting for it's fitting for Black Sabbath and it's fitting for Ozzy. All right, Glenn Kirchens continues. Fun fact, Super Czar, an instrumental piece Iommi dreamt up, had a 55 voice choir. I did not know it was 55 people. That's incredible. 55 voice choir. And it was majestic enough for the band to use it to open their shows on tours that followed, source Rolling Stones. Fun fact number 2. Bill states that on one of John Bonham's favorite songs was Super Czar, and led to an alleged legendary jam between the two bands to this song. This in of itself clearly places it in the annals of metal history and confirms Sabbath's influence on their contemporaries. So, as I said, I did not know the 55 voice choir part. I love that. But as I said in the video, because one of my criticisms of this song was that I thought it went on too long, and I thought it would have been far more effective on the album. As a song on the album, I think it would have been more effective had it been shorter because it gets a little bit repetitive. But what makes me appreciate the song, and I'm so much more, is that they use it as their opening for a lot of their live shows this point on, like especially if you watch the live show for Never Say Die in '78, I believe it was '78 when that show happened. They have Super Czar as their opener, as like, you know, the band comes out and they're setting everything up, and it's like, I think for that purpose it works beautifully. I just think on the actual album it should have been a little bit shorter because it just kind of goes on a little bit too long.
Yeah, like, you know, looking at its place in the album, I can totally see a song like this that is a bit of a change compared to the rest of it, and it's a bit of a mood shift.
Yeah,
those
and
songs.
I believe it's also over 4 minutes too. So
yeah, it's 3:43.
Okay. So still, I think I had suggested in the video that I think you could have combined Am I Going Insane and Super Czar, and have Super Czar be like a 1 minute intro that leads right into Am I Going Insane, and combine the two songs for a total, because I feel like Am I Going Insane is also a little bit repetitive, and combine the two and make it 1 4 or 5 minute song. I think that would have had much better pace to the B side of the record.
That would kind of complement the pacing of Megalomania too.
Yeah. But oh well, they didn't. Is what it is. All right. Well, thank you for those fun facts, Glenn. I appreciate that. It was great to know those.
Yeah,
Glenn Kirchens
I appreciate
also
it
writes.
too.
Absolutely. Glenn Kirchens also writes, as Ozzy tells in his book, I Am Ozzy, after walking in the studio and seeing the 50-plus person choir and an 80-year-old harpist, quote, they were making noise like God conducting music for the end of the world. I didn't even attempt to put a vocal over that. He then walked out thinking he was in the wrong studio. So I guess if it's from the book, then it's clearly that was the time that story is from.
Confirmed.
We have confirmed. And you know what? I think, and we were talking about Ozzy just intuitively knows how to adjust his voice for the music, and so I think he always knows when to come in, when not to be, how to change the tone of his voice for what the music is, and so I think he has such an intuition for that he knew, listening to this, I don't need to come up with lyrics, or I don't need to put Geezer's lyrics over this song. They do a great job. The song works in of itself. It doesn't need me. I can step this one out.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn, for confirming that too, and for giving us all the little bits of lore that we may have missed or have been slightly unsure about.
And Glenn did this, but also other people have done this in the past. I absolutely love when people write in either quotes or facts, and then they cite their sources. It really shows dedication on people's part that they're actually providing the resources, not just for me to be able to go and look it up, but for everybody else too, so that it's on public record there for people to know the facts. And I just think that's great, and it's really appreciative. And, you know, in an age of so much misinformation and stories being augmented and exaggerated, or it's great when people can just be like, here's what happened, here's the source, you can check it yourself, even for just something like a comment section on a YouTube video. So I always appreciate it when people do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, everyone, for being so kind. So many kind people here.
I know. We have the fucking best people who watch these videos and comment. And yes, we do have an occasional troll come in, but this whole thing is literally just, you know, people who love Black Sabbath, love talking about Black Sabbath, and just want to get in on it. And it's so great to have that. I just love it.
Mm.
All right. We are continuing on through now with our Am I Going Insane video. And KKW Chu, Kachuwu, I don't know, writes, sometimes I'm happy is just sounds like a jam on the riff from the second part of Symptom of the Universe. I don't think it's really a song. So, this goes to, in that video, I had said that my opinion was, I think you could have either condensed, as I mentioned before, condensed Super Czar and Am I Going Insane, make that one song, or you take out Am I Going Insane, and put in the Sometimes I'm Happy, which they played at the Cal Jam, which you and I listened to before, and they also did a bunch of their other shows, and I think had you put Sometimes I'm happy on this album because it was around the same time anyways that they were playing that song. It would have taken Sabotage to the next level, and it would have, because I adore that song and that sound. Um, I don't. I mean, maybe you're right that it's a play on the second part of Symphony of the Universe, but I think even still, it still sounds different. Like, it doesn't sound like it's just a rehash of that song. Like, and the song itself is so good, and it's dynamic, and it just works perfectly. And I mean, I think you say I don't think it's really a song. Well, it is a song technically because they played it as a song, so it's a song. But I think you absolutely could have had it on this record, and it would have worked really well. And I think, and it fit, and especially if it feels sort of similar to Symphony of the Universe, then in its identity and its DNA, then it fits on this album even more because it sounds like the exact tone of a lot of the other songs.
Yeah, I can't speak to this in particular, but I'm listening.
All right, absolutely. So thanks for the comment there. All right, Misanthrope 666 writes, the weird laugh at the end of the song is my favorite part. Yeah, I think I said that in the video as well. That whole transition of the laughing at the end of Am I Going Insane, which goes right into the beginning of the Writ, is probably my favorite transition in a Sabbath record. It's perfect. And honestly, as someone who's not really that big of a fan of Am I Going Insane, I think that's what makes the whole song worth it, is that transition. So I think I think it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I also love it. And it kind of turns from like an insane laugh to like pain. It turns into like a pained laugh or groan or scream even. It transitions that, which then goes into the Writ, which I think is just they did that very well.
Yeah, and it fits with the song "Am I Going Insane," but it also fits with that line through the whole album that we were talking about, especially Megalomania. Like it just works. It works so well. And then Archie 6962 writes, "I love that song," and see, this is what I love is that as much as I can say in the song, I like this part and this part, but I'm not a big fan of this part, and this part. And overall, I think it's probably Sabbath's weakest song that they have, at least up until now. I love that there are people who just adore the song. And as much, like, in a similar vein, as much as I can say, I think Technical Ecstasy is their weakest album. There are people who absolutely adore Technical Ecstasy. And I just think that's awesome that there can be so much diversity of thought within the Sabbath community. All right, Glenn writes, I wake, I bake, I see, observing the Sabbath, new drop, I click, I like, I watch, and I'm the first in the comments, woohoo.
That's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it. Model subscriber.
I like all of those steps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are all great steps.
They're all perfect in that order. Mm-hmm. All right, and then Glenn follows up with, this is a long one here, so we're in for it. Glenn Kirchens writes, totally agree with the drumming is the most standout feature of the song. The lead into the Writ with the insane screams, internal pain connecting the two songs. Like everything else that has happening then, I believe this was a message to someone. And in my honest opinion, I think this and Super Czar are what they wanted and put Dead Nuts where they wanted them. They were pissed and were really flexed their creativity and control over the music, the band, and the fan base. I know it's not everyone's favorite tune from the Sabbath 4, but even the Beatles had Yellow Submarine. To me, this totally fits. Hear me out. The fact that this song shows up on We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll instead of the Writ tells me that some decision/negotiation took place for a poppy-feeling tune for a wide release. No wonder Ozzy said Sabotage took 4,000 years. However, because of the band's attitude due to constant crap they were dealing with, this is the first middle finger to the situation. The Writ is the second middle finger, aimed at the piece of shit ex-manager that screwed them over and precipitated the lawsuits. I think that's a really interesting way to put it. That like they're kind of I like that, flexing their creativity and control over the music, because that's something that they didn't have a lot of when they made this record. They didn't have a lot of control, which led to them entirely producing their next record, Technical Ecstasy. But I think the idea that this is the first middle finger and Rit is the second middle finger is really good. I still don't really like the song, but I think the contrast is this may be the first middle finger and the Rit's the second middle finger. I think the Rit's the better middle finger. Because it is an absolute devastation of these people who are screwing them over. And it's also, it's a middle finger, but it's also a phenomenal song in terms of composition and the lyrics and everything else. Whereas I think Am I Going Insane is just a little, whatever. But
it's definitely establishing that idea, though.
Yeah.
And I mean, this song in general is more of like, your mid-tempo. Like, it makes sense that it saw like a wide release on that compilation, because it's like you're very mid-tempo, like what Glenn says could fit into like a poppy feeling tune, definitely, considering the rest of their song. So that easily could be why they picked this song for that compilation, because not only does it have that kind of, mid-tempo poppy feeling, but it also introduces that idea of like, fuck you to these people who are messing with them during the making of this album. It introduces that, and which is like a whole overarching thing for the whole album. So, in retrospect, for those reasons, it makes sense why they chose this song.
Yeah, and I also think, kind of bring it back to the poppy feeling of the tune for a wider release, rightfully or wrongly so, when you're looking at creating that compilation, you want to reach the widest audience possible. And so maybe it makes sense to put in something that has more of a wide appeal, like Am I Going Insane, which has that more of a pop feel. Now, I don't know if Looking for Today is on that record or the compilation or not. I don't believe it is, but I think if you wanted that sort of pop song that would have that wider appeal, I think that would have been the better choice than Am I Going Insane. But I can understand the rationale and the thinking of, let's put a wide variety of Black Sabbath songs on here to reach the widest audience possible. I completely understand that line of thinking.
Yeah, and combining that with the theme of the song, relating to the theme of the album so well, makes sense.
Yep, 100%. Thanks for all those thoughts, Glenn. You did a great job of really summarizing all of your thoughts. The Beast of England, I like that name, writes, Cal Jam recording of Sometimes I'm Happy is epic. On parts, Ozzy sounds like Steve Marriott. Yeah, I've said before that specific Cal Jam recording of Sometimes I'm Happy is one of my all-time favorite things of Black Sabbath ever. I think it is just phenomenal. And like, you hear I think that specific recording is the absolute best Ozzy's voice has ever sounded ever. That the notes that he hits on that song in that specific recording is like insane. And especially when you consider that song happened later in the Cal Jam performance. So he'd already been singing like for like an hour before they got to that, and the fact that his voice is so crisp and it hits those notes, it is just, the first time I heard that, I was just absolutely blown away, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Yeah, I remember hearing that as well. I think you showed that to me, and very, very pleased with that, especially given that it's a live recording at a show. It sounds great.
Yeah. Funny story about that. So you and I had actually recorded a video of, it was your first reaction to the Cal Jam Sometimes I'm Happy.
Yeah.
And so we recorded it, and you loved it, and we had a great discussion. Unfortunately, there was an issue with the audio, that it didn't sound good at all. Our audio, not the Cal Jam audio, that's perfection. So unfortunately, I could never put it out, because I didn't want to put out something with subpar audio. So unfortunately, that video will never see the light of day. And unfortunately, because we don't want to fake it, we can't do another first-time reaction for a Cal Jam. But I am sure at some point you and I will do some sort of reaction to Cal Jam, and so you'll get all of our thoughts, and Sometimes I'm Happy there.
Exactly.
All right, Bryce Neal writes, sometimes I'm happy. I love how most of the comments for Am I Going Insane is about sometimes I'm happy. I think that's hilarious. Sometimes I'm happy was the blueprint for the second half of Symptom of the Universe with the same guitar riff and vocal melodies. So I don't believe, it wasn't Bryce who said it before. I think it was somebody else who said that it's just a rehash of it, or that wasn't exactly their words, but that's essentially what they were saying. So yeah. I can understand better that Sometimes I'm Happy was the blueprint for the second half of Symptom of the Universe. I still think it works as a separate song and could have been on the record. Same guitar riff, vocal melodies. Yeah, I still think it's different enough that you could have put it on the record and it could have still really worked well, because I think as a standalone song, it's not a song that's dependent upon Symptom of the Universe. It works as its own song, and I don't think the two would have sounded too, they would have sounded a little bit similar. I don't think they would have sounded too much alike that you could not have had them on the same record. Bryce Neal writes, kind of like Who Are You on Sal Bloody Sabbath, the song is more synth heavy and does have more of a pop feel. This song could almost fit on Technical Ecstasy. That is a great point as well. Aside from maybe the laughing part at the end, I think the song fits more for Technical Ecstasy than it does Sabotage. So I think it's kind of a foreshadowing of the direction that Black Sabbath would ultimately go in with Technical Ecstasy. And as we'll talk about when we get into the next record, when we talk about Technical Ecstasy, I think the second track on that album, You Won't Change Me, I feel like it sounds like a lost song from Sabotage. So I think it almost in a way, if you had taken You Won't Change Me, put down Sabotage, and took Am I Going Insane, put down Technical Ecstasy, the sounds of those might have been a better fit. But, it's a 50-year-old album. I as much as I'm sitting here on all these videos talking about, well, if they had taken this and they changed that and they shortened this and they moved that here and they did that, we're talking about an album that came out 50 years ago, decisions that were made 50 years ago. So it's kind of funny to sit here 50 years later and start analyzing super hard all the decisions they could have, should have, would have made. But, is what it is. It's a final product. Enjoy it for what it is.
And I think the comparison of Who Are You to Am I Going Insane is interesting. And I feel like when comparisons like this are always made, you can always find that these songs are more often than not living in about the same areas on the album. Like the Who Are You being on the B-side, like almost at the end, something kind of, mid-tempo and poppy to, I don't know, break up the heaviness of it, or to lead into the heavy outro or what have you. And it kind of is doing the same thing here. It just, once again, like going back to structure of their albums. You can find very consistently comparisons being made to different songs and different albums that are all living in the same space on these albums.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. Good point, Johnny. All right. Andy Bryan writes, side note, American and Canadian buyers of the original album falsely believed for decades that the word radio in the track name was there as an indication that the song had other versions, i.e. those produced not for the North American radio play and presentation. In fact, the term radio is an old working class and seldom used mid-England term for nutter, a crazy fuck who is losing it, a crazy person. So yeah, that's something we talked a little bit about on the video, but I at the time when we recorded it, I knew bits and pieces. I knew that radio because the song has always been kind of presented as Am I Going Insane, in parentheses, radio. I knew that the radio didn't mean that it was played on the radio, but it had a different connotation. I wasn't exactly sure what, but so thank you, Andy, for really kind of putting it so succinctly. And I think that's funny that I didn't know that radio had that meaning. I don't know how you get radio from, I'm sure there's an absolute explanation from how radio derives from that meaning, like Old English, but I think that's interesting that it kind of goes that way.
Yeah, I had no idea. It's a really interesting little piece of trivia, Andy Bryan.
Absolutely.
Because more often than not, people see that they're going to think it's a radio version or radio edit or something like that, but different connotation here.
Yeah. And it's funny because the song itself sounds like it could have been played on the radio. So it's funny. I feel like if you had, like if you had Megalomania Radio, I don't think anybody would be wondering, is this the version of the song that they played on the radio? Megalomania would never be played on the radio.
No.
So I think that's kind of funny that it's for this song, one of the exclusive Black Sabbath songs that you feel sound like could be played on the radio at the time that it came out. All right, and now we go on to the final video. Well, not really the final because we have the podcast, but the final song on the record, The Rip. And our first comment comes from Anthony Yek Ozark, who writes, my favorite song from this album, I saw Sabbath 4 times, twice in the 70s with Ozzy. As I've said before, this was my favorite song, not just on the album, but my favorite Sabbath song, period, for a long time. It's since been dethroned. As I've said before, my favorite Sabbath songs, my top 5, 10, whatever, very fluid. Right now, my favorite is Wheels of Confusion. Ask me again in 6 months, and I might say it's a different song. I might say it's Am I Going Insane Radio. But The Rip was my favorite song for a very long time, and it is absolutely a shining example on this album.
Yeah, I like a lot of the vocal layering that's done too. I think there's a lot of like lower octaves that are being sung by, I don't know who, Ozzy or whoever. Very well could not be Ozzy just based on how low it is, but
yeah,
I think that's a cool element too. It goes back to Super Czar and the other song that had that vocal layering that I'm blanking on right now.
Yeah. And I think also that's awesome that you saw Sabbath 4 times. Twice in the 70s. I mean, I saw Sabbath once.
What a treat.
Yeah, I saw Sabbath once in 2016. So of course, it was aside from Bill, it was the original lineup, which was great. But my one hope for the future is that time travel is invented before we all die, so that I can go to the 70s and watch Black Sabbath play live. That would, to sit there, to be at the quote-unquote Live in Paris show in person, be seated in those rigid seats, looking up at the stage, seeing them play. Oh my God, I wish. So I am 1010% envious of you that you got to see Sabbath, not once, but twice in the 70s with Ozzy. That is awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
All right, our next comment comes from the Beast of England, who writes, unbelievable song, the kind of composition every band should aspire to. Most of us may never get there, but what a ride. A cosmic journey. A cosmic gumbo, in a way. I'm adding that part myself. Props if you get the reference. So anyways, unbelievable song, 100%. And yeah, the composition of the song is just beautiful. From the lyrical composition, one of the few, the only Sabbath song that Ozzy sat down and wrote, one of the few that he came up with the lyrics entirely himself. And the composition lyrically, but also just the overall composition of the song is just what makes it just a breathtaking song and a fantastic closer to the album.
Yeah, I mean, it just flows and feels so natural. Like it's in a way that makes it feel effortless too. But it's hard to do that. Like as a musician, trying to construct a composition for a song and how it's going to flow is not always an easy thing. More often than not, that's like one of the hardest parts of it to figure out, what should go where. And for them, it all just feels so natural, which is just a good thing. And once again, it goes back to their natural chemistry. It's like they know when they're playing together, they know what, they can all hear the same thing. What should sound like from part to part.
100%.
That's hard. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. And yeah, as the Beast of England says, most of us may never get there. A lot of people aspire to do it, but most of us may never get there. It's hard to do, and that's why they are 50 years later still talked about as much as they are. So great comment there, Beast. Thank you. All right, Knight_YYZ writes, this is their best album, hands down. Geezer, Butler, and Bill Ward don't get nearly as much credit as they deserve. I completely agree with that. Ozzy is in his prime, and Iommi's riffs are just pure genius. This and Megalomania are my two favorite Sabbath songs. Then Some to the Universe. They are the masters of transition. One of my Desert Island albums for sure. real quick side note on the Desert Island album note. So as I said, the very first video on this channel was my Sabbath story, where I kind of talked about my story of how I came to love Black Sabbath, and the part of the DNA of how I came to know Black Sabbath was a Desert Island show. Our mutual friend Connor, had this show called Packing List, where you picked five, I believe it was five albums that you would bring with you on a desert island. And the whole thing was he listened to all the albums. We discussed the albums in depth, and you played one of the songs, and you talked about why you loved it. And at the time that I did the show, I liked Black Sabbath. I struggled at the time to come up with albums, because at that time I really only listened to individual songs. I didn't listen to full albums. And so I picked Paranoid because I liked a couple of the tracks. I liked Hand of Doom. I liked War Pig. So I was like, oh yeah, Paranoid. And so we did the show, and it was after the show that I was like, I really do like that album. And so I went back and I listened to the album again. I was like, this is a really good... I need to listen to more of these Black Sabbath guys. And so I went through and I listened to all the albums, and that was really the moment where it hit me. It solidified my love, and I've been hooked ever since. So I owe Packing List, this whole Desert Island album concept, I owe Packing List, and I owe Connor, our friend Connor, a huge debt for getting me back onto Sabbath and really kind of kicking things off for me.
I never realized that was like the big impetus for your Sabbath story. Yeah, that's cool.
That was the catalyst.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so thanks you for bringing back that concept of the Desert Island albums night. And everything you said, I completely agree. We've been talking all about how Ozzy's in his prime, the riffs. We've been talking about all of that. And I agree, they are the masters of transition.
Master of the transition, absolutely. Yep. I'll always think that. And that's another big thing about just having listened to these albums in order as an album. That's such a different experience. And, just especially the way that music is so widely available nowadays. And, everyone's on streaming services and listening to playlists and whatnot. It's like, that's all well and good. But there's something lost when you're not experiencing an album how it was meant to be experienced, which is like, from front to back with these especially with Sabbath, very thoughtful flow and transitions in mind. Yeah. It just leads to such a good experience.
Yep. And I used to be lost. I used to be part of that streaming service, just listen to a song on iTunes and just listen to the song itself, not knowing the context of the album. I used to be blind, but now I see, and which is part of why I've been... like, my love for vinyl has exploded, because I love listening to the full context, the full experience, the ride that the musicians crafted and created for you to listen, because they didn't create it for you to just put on one song and listen to it. They wanted you to listen to the entirety of the album. And so, yeah, great point there, Knight, and great points there, Johnny, as well.
All right. I'll always be an album listener. That's for sure. And that's one of the reasons why I love Sabbath so much, is because that's what they do.
100%. Archie, 6962 writes, I agree with you. An excellent closer for an excellent album. Yep, I think, like, I mentioned last album, Sad Bloody Sabbath, I think every single closer that they have for all of their albums, Warning, Fairies Wear Boots, Into the Void, oh God, why am I blanking on Volume 4? It's Under the Sun. I don't know why I forgot it. I think those are all fantastic closers. And then I think when you get to Sad Bloody Sabbath, Spiral Architect's a little weaker for me, but you bring it right back with the Writ, which arguably may be the greatest closer of them all. Maybe not quite as good as Warning, but that's just me. But yeah, I think excellently put, excellent closer for an excellent album.
Yeah, I can't say any more about it. It's just, it's a sentence that is true. Thank you, Archie.
It is. All right, Bryce Neal writes, this song has a heavy production with the effect on the bass and the use of the backward cymbals. The fade is great, and it almost feels like it goes on forever, and you almost turn it up to hear the end. Yeah, especially with the little blow on the jug part at the very, very, very end. Yeah, and that's one of the best parts about the song is you have that riff at the end that just goes on and on and on, and it fades out, and it's also a riff that played in the middle of the song, but you don't really think too much of it until it comes right back into the end, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, I'm always such a sucker for backwards drums. I think they sound really cool, just because drums have such a short attack and a long release for the not all drums, but especially cymbals. That reversing that just totally changes the game. It makes it sound like almost ethereal, or you can make it sound really haunting too, which is absolutely what Sabbath's going for in this song as a big closer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, our next comment comes from Mike R., who writes, I don't know anyone in real life who loves Sabbath. That's a shame, especially being 19. It makes me so happy hearing someone talk about my favorite Sabbath song and feel the exact same way that I feel. LOL. Thank you, man. Especially someone appreciating the ending of the song. I love that you specifically mentioned my favorite lines too, but they don't know what my eyes see. I feel my world's been torn apart. Gets me every time. Well, thank you, Mike R., because, I read that and that just made me happy hearing that, because, that's what I love about doing this channel, is talking about the things that not everybody talks about. We've said it a billion times, with reaction videos, not everyone's going to talk about the rip. Not everyone's going to talk about all the deep tracks of Sabbath, and that's what I love being able to do with this channel. And I think, and as I was talking about with the whole packing list story, and I think I was probably about 19 or 20. I'm 23 now. Probably 19 or 20 when I had that moment I got turned on to Sabbath. So I was right about your age, Mike. And I'm just glad that we're able to put out these videos and that you're enjoying them, and that we get to talk about these songs that you love and that we love as well.
And hey, Sabbath fans, under 25 solidarity right here.
Absolutely. All right. Andy Bryan writes, an almost emotional story of the band's legal and moral war with the lawyer, Patrick Meehan, formerly the band's chief management director and the author of so much of the band's trials, issues, and financial problems, and yet it ends with an almost surreal happy tone and up-tempo, like clouds parting far in the distance, a true but seldom played classic whose chief protagonist would eventually self-release live at last as a final fuck you to the band he once directed and represented. Yeah. And I think with the whole legal troubles and everything being the backbone of the album and really influencing so much of the tone of the album, to have the final song really be just about that, I think is perfectly sums up this whole era of Sabbath. And I think it's a beautiful song, and I'm so glad that they did. And I think that's a great, I never thought of it that way, but I think that's a great note about the ending of it being sort of like the clouds parting far in the distance. And say what you will about Technical Ecstasy as an album, but the fact that with this sort of, you have all these legal issues and that they're not having as much control over the album as they want, or for their next album to be entirely produced by themselves, that Tony oversaw the album and that they made their next album exactly the way that they wanted to, regardless of whether or not you liked it or not. The fact of what a perfect way and sort of a foreshadow of it being the clouds parting and that they're able to make the album that they wanted to make next. I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's like a really beautiful analogy for the ending of this album, I think.
Definitely. All right, Anders Alvin writes, Blow on a Jug. The song was unintended and was not going to be on the album originally. It came about when Ozzy and Bill were horsing around in the studio while they were recording. Bill played the melody. Yeah, I said in the video, I said I wasn't quite sure exactly how Blow on a Jug came about. I figured as much, if they really were like, all right, today we're going to go into the studio and we're going to record Blow on a Jug. We're going to rehearse and then we're going to record Blow on a Jug. I would have been a little bit concerned. But I love just, it's just weird. And you know what? Sabbath was never afraid to do little weird, funny things. And they do it. And so I love that about... and it sort of... And I think I said in the video, it matches how at the beginning of Hole in the Sky has that sort of little... You have the amplifiers, you have attack, and then you have the count in. So it makes sense that you have something at the very end of the album that's just a little sort of eccentric thing. So, yeah. If Blowing a Jug was a 4-minute song, I would feel completely differently. But as a little... teaser closer thing, it's great.
I think just the term "blow on a jug" sounds like a good insult too. Like, oh, go blow on a jug.
Yeah, maybe it's an old English thing. All right, Black Sabbath, the Black Sabbath writes my favorite album. Well,
wow, confirmed. Black Sabbath's favorite album.
It's confirmed. If Black Sabbath itself says that Sabotage is the best Black Sabbath album, then I think it's you could take it to the bank.
Glad we know that now.
Thank you for confirming that, Black Sabbath. We appreciate it. All right, Glenn writes, the maniacal laugh to start, the bass in the forefront building suspense, then when the listener least expects it, boom, heavier than a neutron star. The way I feel is the way I am. Yes. Oh, I love that song. Yeah, I'm pissed. I'm going to tell you why equals. Yeah, I'm pissed. I'm going to tell you why. Are you Satan? Are you man? You changed the lock since it began. Directed to the management that told them all was good and in the meantime screwing them over. But everything is going to work out fine equals, oh, by the way, here's our most mature and bone-crushing album to date. Ends with Bill beating his kit like it owes him money. The perfect end to my favorite LP, Buys the Sabbath 4. I'm one of the guys who couldn't wait until you got to Sabotage. I was not disappointed. Thank you, my friend. Blowing a Jug is Ozzy and Bill messing around. Peace. Yeah, I know. Glenn had been saying, pretty much since we started the channel and since he first came on, can't wait for you guys to talk about Sabotage. Can't wait for you guys to talk about Sabotage. Can't wait for you guys to talk about Sabotage. Here we are. I'm glad that did not disappoint. I'm glad you enjoyed us talking about Sabotage. And yeah, everything you said was great. Great insight into the songs and the pieces. And yeah, I love that. Boom hits heavier than a neutron star. It absolutely is. Great song.
Yeah, and I mean, I like how he puts out the interpretation of the lyrics too, which is like, yeah, they got gaslit like hell.
Yeah,
And
you know what? In retrospect, it makes for one of their best albums. So maybe it all worked out. And so the age-old question would be, if everything went fine and they didn't have these issues and they had no struggles with their management and everything worked out fine, would they have made as good of an album as they did? The world may never know.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, and then Glenn closes off the writ with, it's okay, bud. I have about 50 songs in my top 10. Yeah, because as I said in the video, I keep saying throughout this whole series, oh yeah, that's in my top 10. That's in my top 10. I've probably said that about at least 20 times, that song's in my top 10. So I have no clue what my top 10 looks like. So yeah, Glenn has about, I think every single Sabbath song is in my top 10. And now we go into the last video we have here to talk about our full album podcast. So as we do with every album, when we do all the songs, I then take all the songs and compile them into an audio-only podcast for people to listen to in its entirety. So we have some comments from there. So from that video. So Bryce Neal writes, this album was the first album to have a different guitar sound. He usually used his Gibson SG for the other albums, but he wanted more attack for this album. The same sound was used for Technical Ecstasy minus the reverb. I don't know what guitar he was using at that point, but it is definitely different from the albums that came before it. It definitely has, I mean, I'm not up to date on all the specifics of specific guitars and whatnot, but Sabotage definitely has a different sound to it. It has a heavier sound to it. And I think that's a great point. Do you have any specific thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely right. Like, I've seen video of him using the SG a lot of the time. But yeah, this album definitely is set apart from the others, and although I don't know what gear he was using, could very well be a different guitar. The whole album in general just sounds like a lot more reverb heavy than their other albums, which just makes it sound epic and boomy and, you know, heavy at parts too. So that could just be like an overall production choice, or I mean, totally believe they used a different guitar for this album in particular, but there's just a lot of production choices that are slightly different than their old albums. That make it like just feel like big,
Yeah.
you know. And I feel like the guitar tone is part of that, and also just like some of the parts where the guitar melody is being backed like by like synth and stuff like that. It really just like solidifies those parts and sets it apart from the other Sabbath albums.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with everything you just said. All right, Glenn Kirchens, we got a big one here. Glenn Kirchens writes, thank you, my friend. I've enjoyed all of your album by album and song by song breakdowns. This is the one. I'm one of those guys who have been biting at the bit for this one. This takes me back to the times when, with a few of my friends, would either be out in someone's garage fixing up someone's beater with a heater, or celebrating a holiday, or just rewarding a long day's toil. I was usually the DJ and would spin the discs. Yes, there was other metal gods represented on the menu: Judas Priest, Deep Purple, the almighty Iron Maiden. But when I placed that needle on a Sabbath record, it was like, hell yeah, turn that shit up, bro. To a few of the attendees at these confabs, maybe collabs, I'm not sure, who didn't get it at first, eventually fell in love with the Sabbath 4. But when Sabotage hit the turntable, everyone in unison, after hearing that guitar get plugged in, would stop what they were doing and scream, "What are you, chicken?" These days, my six adult children do much the same. I look forward to the final quarter of the Sabbath with Ozzy era. Technical Ecstasy, Never Say Die are lambasted and ignored by the most ardent Sabbath fans. Boy, are they missing out. Looking forward to spending my Sabbaths listening to these Sabbath gems with you and the rest of the aficionados who have gathered here. Peace. Well said. And hey, if your children are doing the same thing you are, listening to Sabbath, you raised them right.
You did something right. Yeah,
you raised them right. 6 kids too. Wow, good on you, Glenn. And yeah, I great. And I think you alluded to before. You talked about how Sabotage was the first Sabbath album you heard. So I think that also speaks to why maybe it's your favorite. Because it was the first one to hit you, and what a first album to listen to as well. What an introduction to Sabbath. So yeah, thank you for sharing that story with us, Glenn. We're always glad to have you, and I am excited. We have different thoughts to say about Technical Ecstasy, Never Say Die than we did the previous 6 albums, but I am very excited to talk about it because I think it will be a different discussion than we've had, and especially Technical Ecstasy. I think will make for a rather interesting discussion and an interesting dive.
Yeah, I agree. I think the discussion is going to be a lot different than it has been in our previous album and song commentaries. I think it's going to be a lot different.
Yeah. And our final comment comes from B0110, who writes, "Megalomania is a brilliant song with a disgusting riff." Exactly everything we were saying about Megalomania. I completely agree with you.
Disgusting is definitely the way I would put it.
What did I think it was Glenn for Sabotage or for Sad Bloody Sabbath said dirty nasty riffs.
Yeah.
So definitely fitting in with that. And that wraps up all of our comments that we have for Sabotage. I want to thank everybody who left a comment. This is definitely by far the most comments we've ever had for a video. And I love it. You know, I love doing these videos. You know, I love just hearing all of your thoughts and discussing them with Johnny and talking about them. And I don't care if it takes us 2 hours, 4 hours, 10 hours to discuss them all. I love getting to do this. This is just one of my favorite parts about this channel. And lots of great comments. Lots of great thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of good people on the channel here that are talking to us, and even there's only like 1 or 2 negative ones on this one, but even the negative ones are interesting too.
Yeah, or funny
because they definitely they give different insight to our thoughts about it, and then sometimes they're just straight up hilarious. Yeah. But always a pleasure getting to do this with you, Nathaniel.
Yeah, absolutely. Always great to do this. And I want to say we will be kicking off Technical Ecstasy soon enough, we'll be going through all that album. And like I alluded to, it'll be a little bit different because it's not going to be, it's no secret. Technical Ecstasy is my least favorite of the 8. That doesn't mean I hate it. But it's not going to be me just going through every song saying, oh, I love this part, I love that part. It's going to be a little bit more critical. It's going to be a little bit more of a deconstruction, talking specifically about maybe why I didn't. But it'll all be under the, hey, if you love Technical Ecstasy, good on you. I'm glad you love it. Here's why I personally don't. And there will also be points of disagreement, because I know there are songs on Technical Ecstasy that I not just like, but love, that I know Johnny doesn't quite like. So it'll be a good discussion, and we'll be kicking that off soon enough and diving into those. And I'm excited to do it. I think it's going to be a really good one to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely look forward to it.
So that's going to conclude us for today with our Sabotage questions. Johnny, thank you so much for joining us. As always, love having you here, a part of these videos.
Thank you for having me, Nathaniel, and thank you for including me in your nice little Sabbath community here. I want to know where Glenn Kirchens is at, because I want to hang out with him sometime.
We gotta. I would love to work out something for Glenn to pop up on this channel in some capacity. You know, it'd be fun if we could work it out. I don't want to put Glenn on the spot, but it'd be great if we could do a watch along for one of the shows with Glenn.
Absolutely.
I think Glenn, we'll talk about something at some point. We'll definitely. I want to have Glenn on at some point in some capacity, because Glenn has the best insights here. I just love what he has to say. So we'll work out something at some point.
And honestly, coming at the heels is Bryce Neal too. I think.
Yeah.
Always coming in with interesting stuff, and Bryce definitely talks a lot about production elements and music stuff like that I particularly find myself interested in.
Yeah, we just have the best commenters. We really do. Yeah, so many people have such great things to say, and I love the regulars. I mean, we get people who kind of trickle in, who will drop things every once in a while, or new people, but we have a lot of regulars who every single video are leaving their thoughts. And I just love seeing people's names pop up when I get the notification that someone commented. So thank you to everyone who commented. Thank you for Johnny for being here. We will be diving into Technical Ecstasy soon, and talking about that, and then going into Never Say Die and wrapping up the original 8, which is crazy to think about, a year and a half later after starting this. And once we finish Never Say Die, we do have some things that will be taking this channel in new directions. But we'll save all that until we finish the original 8. So until then, until we get into Technical Ecstasy, thank you so much for watching.